Let's dig into the best week of the year in Sevilla, Semana Santa. Hello, welcome back to Sevilla Storytime. My name's Lisa. I've been living in Sevilla for the last 8 years of my life, and I'm here today to tell you about Semana Santa. So when people talk about Sevilla, there are many things that stand out. By far, the most famous thing about Sevilla is its famous Semana Santa celebrations. Semana Santa is the Spanish translation of Holy Week. It's the week that commemorates the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Many people are spending time in fasting and prayer, especially on Good Friday, on the day when Jesus died. So there are various different liturgical events that happen within the church. It's universal. It is the most important week of the year because, quite frankly, without the resurrection, without the passion and resurrection, the Christian faith is pointless. It's the thing that underpins all of our beliefs. Here in Spain, in general, it's a Catholic country, so there's always been a big emphasis on celebrating Semana Santa. There's famous celebrations in Zamora. They do it very differently to the way that we do it down here in the south, but they do have some quite impressive processions. Throughout Andalusia in particular, I would say that there's a huge emphasis on this very kind of extroverted way of celebrating the mysteries of the Christian faith. If you go to Malaga, they have huge celebrations, in Cádiz as well, in Granada, even within the pueblos around Andalusia and in many other parts of Spain. There are huge celebrations. I don't want to upset anyone by saying this, but in my opinion, the biggest and most famous celebrations are those in Sevilla. I'd certainly heard about Sevilla's Semana Santa for years and years before I ever dreamed of coming to Sevilla. I knew it was big, but I didn't know it was this big. Semana Santa in Sevilla is a huge deal. Even if they don't like it, even if they're not religious, no one can argue that this is when the city just explodes in the best way possible. So just general tips for surviving and thriving in Semana Santa. You can expect huge crowds of people. So if you're agoraphobic and you hate being around people, then I certainly do not recommend Semana Santa for you. It hurts to say it, but if you can't stand being around people and having to wait for long periods of time, probably standing up, then this is going to be tough for you, right? I'm not saying that to put anyone off coming to Semana Santa, because it's certainly worth the wait and the effort and the tiredness. But I'm not going to lie to you, it's not easy, right? This is not a walk in the park. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of patience. There are 2 ways that you can see Semana Santa in Sevilla. The first way is to invest in a seat, right? So you can buy a seat in the official recorrido. So this is the route that the processions take. So every single procession that goes out during the week of Semana Santa passes around their own neighbourhood, but has to make their way to the cathedral. And as they approach the cathedral, all of these images pass through what is called La Campana. It's one of the central streets of the city centre. And they all make the same route up towards the cathedral. They all let all of the images enter into the cathedral with all of the members of the hermandad. They say a prayer inside the cathedral, and then they leave and they go back to their church where the images come from. This takes hours, right? Some of these hermandades are in the street for literally 14, 15 hours at a time, depending on the distance between the cathedral and their church. Perhaps the best way to see the images as close up as possible and without any stress, without having to stand up all the time, and is in the official route, as in the proximity of the cathedral. So that's the first way you can see Semana Santa, which I would say is the kind of civilized, a relaxed way to do it. You're just chilling with your food, waiting for these processions to pass you by. And because they all come the same way, you can sit there all day and watch all of the processions that pass by without having to move an inch. But then there's the other way to see Semana Santa, which for me is my preferred option, because to me it feels more like an adventure. In some ways, there are some kind of unexpected moments that can happen that can really feel like a blessing or a gift. The second way is to just go out into the street, figure out where each image is going to be at any given moment of the day, because there are ways to know this, and just to try and find those images and see them. And then if you want to, you can even keep following them or try and find them at another point during the day and see them in another point of the city. There's more freedom of movement, there's more liberty, you can choose where you want to be. Whereas if you've hired a seat, you're pretty much stuck there. And that's not to make it sound really negative, like you could look at it two ways. You could say, oh great, I can chill here all day. Or if you're like me and you like to run around, then the better option for you would be to just do it your own way and find the images and wait for the images. So how do you even go about finding the images? Especially if you're a visitor to the city. I know that my first Semana Santa, which was a long time ago now, I don't want to say confusing because that's a negative word, but it was kind of like overwhelming. But I'd literally been in Sevilla for a month when I saw my first Semana Santa. And I still didn't know really where I was. I didn't know the streets very well. I didn't know the different neighborhoods. I literally knew about 3 streets. And the thing about Sevilla is that it can be a bit of a maze, right? So the streets, especially in the old town, they're quite kind of winding streets with some dead ends, and then there's some other bits that lead off into unexpected passageways. And the thing as well is that the official route closer to the cathedral means that many of the streets are actually closed off. Even for me, I've lived here for 8 years, sometimes I think I can get across a street by just moving over there about 3 feet, and then I discover that the street's been closed, and I go, But I know my way around Sevilla, so I can just do an about turn, run around the city and find another way to where I want to get to go. But if you're new to the city, then what do? And remember, you're in a sea of people. You're kind of on the Titanic, watching everybody running in one direction and you're going in the other. Oh my God, am I going the right way? Yeah, it's that kind of thing. I'm rambling. I do ramble. The way that you know where these images, where these processions are going to be, is through getting a copy of the llamador. Okay, so basically it's a publication. It's like a little, I need to show you this, don't I? Un segundo. Okay, right. This isn't the best example of a llamador, but it's the first one I found. I've got a ton of these all around my house, but yeah, it's fine. It serves the purpose. These are in kiosks and shops around the city in the days leading up to Semana Santa and also during Semana Santa. There's even some bars and shops where they just have them like lying around, and if you ask for one, or you can just take one. But these are a good place to start. You can also get PDF versions of these online if you look for them, if you know what you're looking for. Basically, it's just a program. For example, if we were to look at, here's a lovely image. This is the sort of thing you can expect. So if we look at Domingo de Ramos, right? So this is Palm Sunday, as it says here, Palm Sunday. I don't know if you can see this very well. But basically what we're looking at here, I feel like a teacher. These are the names of all of the different hermandades. You definitely can't see this, but maybe I can give you a screenshot. But these are all different hermandades, right? So we have La Borriquita, Jesús Despojado, La Iniesta, La Paz, La Cena, San Roque, La Amargura, La Estrella, y El Amor. Right, so for example, La Borriquita. This is the first image, or one of the first images that leaves its church. on Palm Sunday. And it's a representation of Jesus entering into Jerusalem on the donkey. That famous Bible passage where Jesus is about to go into Jerusalem to accept his passion and death, and he does it on the back of a donkey, right? We've all, even if you're not religious, surely you've seen Jesus Christ Superstar with the Hosanna, hey, Zana, 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 Hosanna. I do beg your pardon. I get carried away. So La Borriquita, for example, leaves the church of El Salvador, in La Plaza de El Salvador, which is very close to the cathedral, by the way, and is one of the biggest tourist attractions. So if you get to have a look at that church, it's well worth going into. And down this side, we have the times, right? So it says 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5, half an hour intervals, right? La Borriquita leaves El Salvador at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it tells you here, salida. So this means when La Borriquita leaves. It's like the exit from El Salvador, right? And then it tells you the name of each street that this image is going to be on at every half an hour interval. So this shows you the route. And because El Salvador is so close to the cathedral, you can see that the route is very short compared to others. Like, for example, La Paz leaves at 3 o'clock and it takes all this huge routes to get in. And these are all the names of the streets, right? So one way to find your way around in Semana Santa is to get hold of one of these, whether it be online or a physical copy like this, and to look up the names of these streets, maybe on Google Maps, or maybe ask someone for help. And if you can get to this street at this time, more or less, then you will see what is called La Cruz de Guia. So it's the first cross that signals the arrival of the hermandad. And this is the entrance back into the original church. So each hermandad goes into the cathedral. So the La Borriquita enters into the cathedral around about this time. Then it leaves again and it makes its way back to El Salvador. Right, so it's a very short, very quick one. If it's at all possible to find a local to show you around, then I would highly recommend that. So there are actually companies that do sort of tours. I know that in my first year, I really needed someone to show me around, mainly because I just didn't have a clue where I was, right? So that's the biggest obstacle you're going to come across, is actually the logistics of finding where each hermandad is. And also, you kind of need someone to help you to decide which hermandad is the priority to see. Now, that's quite relative because everyone has their preferences, but there are some hermandades that you should not miss out on. For example, Gran Poder, which is one of the biggest, most famous processions in Semana Santa. Another one is La Macarena, La Esperanza de Triana. I'm biased, but I would also say San Gonzalo. Like, there are some huge hermandades that are famous that you should not miss. Okay, and I'm not saying that to look down on others and say they're less important, but from a kind of tourist perspective, you certainly want to see the more famous ones, right? It's always a good idea to have someone to kind of help you to make a decision and to just take you by the hand and literally say, we're going to go and see Jesus Despojado. That's what we're going to do today, and you have no decision, you have no choice in the matter. Another thing about these programs that you do need to be careful of is that each one of these can vary slightly. So many years I've had 2 or 3, and they all have kind of different, I mean, they're more or less the same, but some of them have very different ideas about where each image is going to be at each time. And that's because sometimes there are changes to the program just before this gets published and they don't have time to update it, or I don't know, it's just errors within the publication. But it gives you a good indicator, a good idea of where each image is going to be. Also, there can be delays in the timetable, and if you are waiting in the spot at that certain time and you don't see your image passing by, it may be heavily delayed, in which case it might be worth backtracking and trying to find the hermandad in another point of the city. or maybe rearranging your plan. You are going to have to wait sometimes for an hour, maybe even an hour and a half to see some of the processions, depending on which procession it is, which day of the week, depending on where you're trying to see this. I would say expect to be standing on your feet for a long time, expect to be walking a lot, like, I'm not joking, maybe 20,000 steps, 25,000 steps a day, if you're ambitious and want to see all of the processions. I know I've certainly done thousands of steps in one day. It's a good way to lose weight, actually. If you're trying to like burn off the Christmas pudding, it's a great way to do it. Yeah. So another thing is just to be patient with people. Don't be scandalized too much if you see people being irritable and maybe even arguing with each other. Unfortunately, this is a reality of Semana Santa. It shouldn't be, but it happens. People get annoyed, people get tired and grumpy. So imagine you turn up in a side street and you finally found the spot where you want to be, and you can see that the procession is coming in the distance. Do not put yourself in the front line, okay? Because, and it might sound obvious, but a lot of people do this. The people who are standing on that street have likely been waiting there for about an hour in some cases, maybe even 2 hours in extreme cases. And there are people who camp out overnight to see some of these images. So don't put yourself in the first line if you're arriving last minute, because you're putting your life at risk. Because no, I mean, that's extreme. I'm joking, but it can start a lot of arguments because people get really pissed off about it. And I mean, I would as well if some random person put themselves in first place and I'd been waiting there for an hour and a half. It's just be mindful and respectful and put yourself behind people. If you want to be in first place, you need to wait your turn and be patient. Just a note on the culture here. Sometimes when people come from other countries to experience Semana Santa, they can feel kind of a little bit shocked or maybe upset sometimes by some of the mannerisms that Sevillanos have. What I mean by that is that here we're all just trying to get from one side of the city to the other, but especially with some of the older people, I've been pushed out of the way by elderly ladies. Like literally, they have a force that I wish I had. So I would not need to go to the gym if I had that much strength. They literally, not all of them, but there are some who will literally just be like, boom, move out of the way, I'm gonna go and see my Jesus. And you're like, oh my God. And you end up in the emergency room. Oh, I'm exaggerating. But there's definitely more of a kind of, I don't know how to describe this. They're kind of like very forceful and like they know what they want and they're gonna go for it. And I've had to kind of convert myself into doing that as well, just to survive, because if you don't, this is why I'm saying this to you, because I've seen it many, many times with tourists, and I'm not saying all the time, but there might come a moment when you have to push your way, because if you don't, you will be pushed. I'll give you an example. One time I was waiting for a procession, and I was already in my spot, and I saw two British tourists, expecting that as all these people were moving in a line to kind of get from one side of the street to the other, they expected that if they waited long enough, someone would eventually say, oh, you pass by and I'll wait for you a second and then I'll go over to that side of the street. It never happened. That couple was standing there for a full 15 minutes because not one person stopped to say, oh, do you want to pass? These were just two people, right? Just two people in a multitude of people. And they were too polite. And they kept saying, should we go? Like, what do we do? What do we do? And it's not that the people that were moving quickly through the line did it like on purpose to say, oh, well, I don't care about you. I'm going to do what I want. I mean, maybe some people did think that, but it's more of a cultural thing. People just expect everyone to push to get to where they want. So if someone isn't doing it, I feel like sometimes it doesn't cross the mind of many people to be like, oh, maybe these people want to pass by. I'm not saying this to badmouth Sevillanos or anything. because I've had to start pushing as well. As long as you're not violent or rude, like wait a little bit, but then also go for what you want, because if not, you're just going to get pushed around. Take lots of water and snacks with you. Or obviously you can always go into a bar or a restaurant to have something to eat, but just make sure that you are eating regularly. I do recommend taking a snack, like they sell sunflower seeds in the shops, pipas, or just get some crisps or something, fruit, because many times you will be waiting for literally an hour at a time. And it's fun, don't get me wrong. This is a very fun experience. It will be very beautiful. It's an assault on the senses, so music, incense, people everywhere, beautiful images, a lot of walking, and after a while all of this can take its toll, especially if you're a little bit older or you have health problems. Really just make sure that you're staying hydrated, that you're eating, and that you're going to the toilet regularly, because believe me, there are people who will cross their legs because they know that the procession is going to come in like 20 minutes and they're desperate for the toilet, but they're like, no, I'm not moving from this spot because I've been here for an hour already. Just take it easy. Think about it this way. A lot of these processions are in the streets all day long. Right, they're there for hours. So if you need to pull out of a certain street to go to the toilet or to eat something, or to go into a restaurant to have a tapas or something, don't worry, you're not going to miss the entire procession. It's quite hard to miss an entire procession because they're in the street all day. Because I know when I first started going to Semana Santa, I remember feeling worried, oh my God, if I eat a tapas, am I even going to see this procession? I'm going to miss it. But that's just me. I'm like that. I'm a stress head. I've now learned to be more relaxed and say it's okay. You can see it later on. And in fact, on that note, I would say that many of these processions are actually more beautiful at night. And the reason for that is that there's more atmosphere. They have to light the candles around the Virgin. They light the candles around the mystery, like the images. And so everything just has this aura of mystery about it. There's just something about seeing these images in a small kind of corner of a street, with all of the incense going up into the air, with beautiful music, and you're just seeing these images lit up by the light of candles. I mean, it's just otherworldly. And if you don't get to see some of the images this year, don't worry. It's all literally the same, pretty much the same every year. So you can always see it next year. And on the note of places to eat, there are plenty of bars, plenty of options to get tapas or to get a bigger dinner. The food here is really nice, so there's plenty of traditional dishes that you can try out. The food is pretty cheap and the waiters are generally quite friendly. So all round, it's generally a pretty good experience. One thing I would say is it might not be the easiest thing to find somewhere that's very quiet and relaxed during Semana Santa, at least in the city centre. So if you want to find somewhere to eat a quiet meal during Semana Santa, then you might have to go a bit further out, cross the river to go into Triana. And even then, it depends what day of the week we're talking about. You are probably going to have to wait to be served. So this is why I'm insisting on you eating some snacks as well. Again, this depends where you go. It depends which bar. But I would say don't really expect full-on sit-down meal. Maybe other people might tell you something different. I'm just talking about my own experiences because I kind of run around the city and try to see everything. But there's certainly no shortage of places to eat and drink in Sevilla. All right, another tip is to be prepared for all kinds of weather. This year is 2025. Last year, a lot of the processions actually got cancelled because it was raining practically all week. That was devastating for a lot of us. I mean, devastating is a strong word, but it was not easy to take. Because, we spend all year preparing for this, the musicians, it's just a lot of preparation. And it's great. But anyway, that's a different thing. due to the nature of Semana Santa, it's it's a spring festival, it's Easter, so depending whether Semana Santa falls early on in the year, so like February, or whether it falls a bit later, March, April, the weather can be quite volatile. Sometimes there's showers, it can be quite all over the place, kind of like a British summer, so it's raining one minute, then it's sunny, and then it's raining and sunny, and all the Sevillanos and me, we're all having heart attacks because we're like, are we actually going to go out in procession today or not? And then it can get really hot. It doesn't get exceedingly hot, it doesn't get unbearably hot. There are some days when you can certainly get sunburnt, right? So I've had my years where I've gone out wearing a nice kind of dress to go and see an hermandad. There was one Holy Saturday, un Sábado Santo, where I got really sunburnt on this shoulder, and I had a mark on this shoulder for like a year after that. So I would just say be prepared for everything. Maybe bring a jacket for you because it can get quite cold in the evenings, especially if you're going out in the madrugada, which are processions in the early hours of Good Friday, literally in the middle of the night. Definitely take a jacket for that, or a coat. For the midday processions, sun cream. Make sure you have sun cream, maybe even a sun hat, sunglasses. The last thing you want to do is get sunstroke while you're waiting for these processions. It's one thing to be sightseeing and walking around the city, going in and out of places, and it's another thing to be standing on the street for an hour waiting for a procession with the sun in your face. Like, that can really do some damage. So just come prepared for heat, for rain, and for cold, because it's springtime, it's temperamental. Don't expect stable weather. Make sure your phone is charged or your camera is charged, because these processions are gorgeous and you will most likely want to take some photographs. As someone who is deeply into Semana Santa, one thing I would say, and no one else is going to do this, trust me, but please just be mindful of the person behind you when you're lifting your phone to take a photograph. Some people record the entire procession with their phone, and even with iPads, with huge things, in front of people who've been standing there for hours. Sometimes I've been waiting for like an hour to see a procession, and it's approaching, the image is approaching, and then some geezer in front of me gets his iPhone out, and then I don't see anything, because it's like being in when you go to concerts or whatever and you end up not seeing anything. Don't be that person. Just don't. If you're going to take a photo, just do it quickly, or be discreet. Don't. Just be considerate. Be considerate, please. We will all be grateful to you. Last but not least, just enjoy Semana Santa. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Leave your preconceptions behind. You're going to see some things that might seem quite shocking at first because you're not used to them. You don't really know what they are. So obviously I'm talking about the capirotes, but I'll talk about those in another video. Just expect to see something special. Most people who see these processions in Semana Santa come away feeling deeply moved, touched in some way, and having had a really great time. At the end of it, you'll just remember the good stuff. You'll only remember the good stuff, because Semana Santa truly is special. And one thing I would say as well is if you want to understand the soul of this city, and you want to understand who Sevillanos truly are, I would say that Semana Santa is the best way to do it. The whole thing is so beautiful, full of art and passion and flavour and music, drama. Like it's so extroverted that it just reveals so much about the Sevillano spirit. So even if it's just for that, I would highly recommend coming to Semana Santa here, even if it's just for the one time. I'm going to make some more videos that kind of are related to this one. So this was more of a whistle stop what to expect in Semana Santa kind of video. So I do hope to see you here back again. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you do like this video. If you would like any tips, or if you want to leave any advice, if there's anyone out there, any Sevillanos or anyone who lives here that wants to leave advice, please feel free to leave some tips in the comments. Or if you want to ask me any questions, if you want to know more, just write down below, and I'll try my best to respond to you. Whatever you do, have a fantastic Semana Santa and just enjoy it. It truly is the best way to see Sevilla and to understand its people. Anyway, see you soon. Bye-bye. Hey JC, JC, won't you fight for me? Sana ho, sana hey, superstar.